Thank you. You. Yeah. As you said, I was in the band Vardis. I joined when I was a young kid, basically 17 and looked about 12. But I'm going to start by just letting you know a bit about what Vardis ended up doing, because it was sort of limited success, let's say. If it was a major success, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably be doing what Iron Maiden are doing now. But so you originally asked me to talk about the new wave of British heavy metal and my part in it. But I've actually got a ulterior motive, and that is to sell our new album. So our new album is out now on different coloured vinyl: Grimace Purple, Multi-Splatter, and 180-gram black. It's a pretty good package, but I'll talk about that later. So, a bit about the heavy metal, bit about the band, but mainly I think he wanted to also talk about just being in a band and the progress that a band can make from virtually nothing to getting a record deal, sort of thing. So, speaking of record deals, these are albums that were released. That was the first album, live, guaranteed no overdubs, honestly. Not like Thin Lizzy. Second album, third album, and a compilation that was put together after maybe a year after I left the band, but it's all me on those tracks. The band did continue after I left. Released another album with a guy called Terry Horbury from, he was in a band called Blizzard of Oz. You might know that. Okay. We played some pretty big gigs with some pretty big bands. This one's at Port Vale Football Club, and this was called the Heavy Metal Holocaust. And as you can see from the lineup there, there's quite a few names up there that you might recognise. We were first on. That's me. This is a lot of people. About 40,000 people. And playing to 40,000 people is nowhere near as scary as talking to about 20. Honestly. So, yeah, that was... Motorhead were the big band at the time. I mean... They were number one in album charts and single charts and things like that. Not all the time, but for a metal band to get to number one in UK was pretty special, and Motorhead did it with quite a lot of ease. They were loud. We were loud. And I don't know whether you can see it, but all the gear, that represents the biggest assembled PA in the world at the time, in terms of mass anyway. So, down there, across there, all big bass bins, mid-range, all across the front. I don't know whether you can see, but God knows what these saw at the front. You couldn't see anything, and this guy's trying to climb up and get on the stage. So yeah, we played some big gigs. About 3 weeks after we did that, we did the Reading Rock Festival. We weren't booked to do the Reading Rock Festival. A good old fellow called Alex Harvey died, and we got his spot on the bill. So yeah. So again, 40,000 people there. Not scary at all. We did tours, major UK and Ireland tours with, first of all, with a band called Budgie. Don't know whether you remember those from the 70s rock scene. And then we got a major tour with Hawkwind, who at the time had Ginger Baker drumming with them. That was fun. Budgie Slade after that. Notice it says Slade plus support. Slade never put the names of their support bands. It's all about Slade. But that was great. We had a great time doing that as well. So, yeah. Whacking through these, aren't I? What can I talk about? Right, yeah, we played also major sort of venues which were normal tour dates for the big touring bands in Britain. All the city halls and theatres like Hammersmith Odeon, which is now Hammersmith Apollo, which is where the comedians are on your TV. Changed it from Odeon to Apollo. Glasgow Apollo, the famous 12-foot high stage there. You don't want to fall off that. Yeah, Liverpool Empire, which we visited just in January, where I don't know whether you know, but on Hard Day's Night, the Beatles film, that's where they sort of did a lot of the scenes being chased and things. Yeah. We did tours abroad. We were releasing various records, doing live gigs and promos around radio stations like Radio Hallam and all the local radio stations that are around Britain, commercial and BBC. There was sessions for the Friday night rock show, which was run by a guy called Tommy Vance, who broke a lot of bands. And a fella called John Peel was into our music as well. This one is a video of a live concert we did at Shepperton Studios, and it ended up being filmed, well, obviously videoed, and put out on London Weekend Television. So that was about the most coverage we got. Round about this time, we were trying our best to keep up with the likes of Def Leppard and Iron Maiden, who have got a massive more budget than what we had in terms of publicity and promotion.
The thing that I'm really interested in knowing more about, I suppose, is the you mentioned, and I've read the liner notes for the new album where you go into this a bit as well. Mm-hmm. Coming into the band as a basically a tiny infant.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm interested in the experience of like how you came in, how you wound up being the bass player, and what that was like.
Yeah. Here we go. Next slide. Great question. Great segue. So basically, I saw an advert in the paper and auditioned. And I'd been playing in working men's club bands. Now, if you think about this in terms of Palmerston North and the bands that are around here, it's covers band, basically. You played chart hits and stuff like that of the 60s and 70s, or maybe the 50s if you went about that far. So I'd been playing in a couple of club bands, and you play something like 3 20-minute sets a night in between the bingo. And you get paid. It was quite good.
And if you hadn't have been in the band, would you have been allowed into those venues?
I was
at that
15
age?
when I started, and right from that very first point, even though I looked about 12, I was drinking beer. So yeah. Yeah, sort of grew up in pubs and clubs. From that point on, the sort of band I was in faded away, and I was looking to join another band and answered this one, and this was a bit different because it was doing original stuff. Now that was all new to me, So I'm 17 years old, and I just bought this bass, and I could hardly play it because it's a long scale bass. Here it is. So Fender Precision, bought brand new in 1976. This is a 1975. All the sweat on this, all the marks, all the dings and things are all me-induced. It's 4 inches longer on the neck than what I had. I bought a first Fender bass, which was a Music Master, which was absolutely lovely, but I wanted one of these. So that was bought by trading in my Music Master bass and paper round, basically, and paying it off on HP. So I did a few auditions, but I was reaching for notes because 4-inch difference on a scale, it makes it hard to finger the notes right. So anyway, got there in the end. But I did the audition. They wanted me. God knows why, but they did. So I joined the band and never got paid again. So that was it. That was it. But it was a different kind of thinking. It was a different mindset because you know, in the club band, there were 4 of us and we were getting paid 40 quid a night. And that was pretty good. That was way better than what I could earn a week's worth of paper rounds and stuff like that. So, you know, 10 quid a night, Saturday and Sunday, maybe a Friday, maybe a Sunday noon and night jobs in the working men's clubs. And then all of a sudden, playing for 30 quid in pubs over the Pennines where you're having to go further, travel further to get gigs, because mainly where I'm from in sort of the Leeds, Wakefield area of West Yorkshire, that was all into punk music and you couldn't get rock gigs. Now, at this point in time, nobody thought about heavy metal or the new wave of British heavy metal. This is 1977, the height of the punk era, basically. 1976 was when the Sex Pistols had, what was it called?
Never Mind the Bollocks.
Yeah, Never Mind the Bollocks. But the single that was first out, Anarchy in the UK. So after that, a proliferation of punk bands came out, and all Leeds and Wakefield area and West Yorkshire was all into punk stuff. You could not get a rock gig. We had to travel to Lancashire, the mill towns of Lancashire, or down to Derbyshire, Peak District area. Do you know your British geography? Yeah, there's a few of you do. Okay, so this picture here is taken on Hornsey Beach on the Yorkshire coast. And that one's at the club at Hornsey, and this one's at Shipley, which is on the outskirts of Bradford. And these were basically maybe the first few gigs that I did with the band. We were doing a set, mainly original material written by Steve, the guitarist. Steve. This fella here is called Paul Wadkin, the drummer, 3-piece band. And 3-piece bands, yeah. 1977, I think the Police had a few hits out. They were a 3-piece band, and they had a completely different sound. With a 3-piece band, 1 guitar, 1 bass, you've either got to... You'd be like the Police and fill the sound with guitar effects, or like Free, like Paul Kossoff and Paul Rogers. Simon Kirk, who was the bass player? Forget. But 3-piece band there, they were a 4-piece band, but only had a guitar, bass, drums. And their sort of approach to it was leave lots of holes in the production, in the sound. Our sort of approach was turn it up to 11 and go for it, and just whack. You.
Do you have any examples of that?
I'll get onto that very shortly. So yeah, Hornsey Club there, just a couple more pictures. Very much into moving around on stage as well, because the music was exciting enough to sort of take you there. So there's Paul on the drums, and we decided we need some promo gear to get some to get some better gigs, basically. More money, better gigs, more gigs, whatever. So we put this little leaflet together. It's actually... It's been reprinted as part of the album. So, all the extra stuff that you get with the album when you buy it.
There's a gig poster in there as well.
Oh yeah, I'll show
so you can put it up on your door if you're expecting Vardis to come and play.
Reminded me about that. This is. I'll open it up. So this is a poster we used to send out to venues, and it had a little white band across the bottom, so you could write in Vardis appearing here, Thursday. Sort of thing.
You left the
50p admission.
You left the white band off, so people have to put labels on the bottom if you're coming.
Whatever, yeah. But that was basically from these photo sessions that we had these days. So. Don't need to see the drummer, do we? So that's I was on the dole. Didn't earn any money from playing music at that point, so I was on the dole, and I would go around to Steve's place in Leeds, in Wakefield, and we'd spend all day drinking tea and having bacon sandwiches and rolling up posters and putting stamps on and sending them out to venues. And then the other part of the time would be getting in his garage and fixing the gear, which constantly broke down, fixing the van, which constantly broke down. Anyway, we decided that we needed to get some more gigs, and we put together this promo thing. We decided we'd do a demo. So we went to a 16-track studio in Huddersfield. So we put this thing together, and Situation Negative was one of the new songs that Steve had written. So that's Steve singing, playing guitar, me on bass, Paul Wadkin on drums. We lied about our ages on this, because Paul was about 26 and way ancient. I was 17, but we thought we'd put 18 so I wouldn't get asked in pubs. I don't know what Steve was, he might have been lame, I don't know. So yeah, that is a 2-track demo we did, and we sent that out on cassettes. And I've just put these things on the side because Fred Hepworth is Steve's son, and he's basically put this new album package together. He's done a fantastic job. But he discovered this. There was a photo and promo and cassette pack that we dropped off in Chiswick Records in London. The first time we went down to London to do the first ever gig, you'll know that. You'll know that? You're East End though, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not next month.
Yeah. There's a famous music boozer at the time, and they'd get big bands on. In fact, I went to see a fella called Michael Desbar there a few years later, and I wasn't interested in him, but we went because the rhythm section, bass and drums, was Clem Burke and Nigel Harrison from Blondie playing at that pub. So anyway, just a little thing. So yeah, we went down for our very first gig in London and took the opportunity to seek out the addresses of some record companies and drop off promo packages. Soho Square is where CBS Records is, and that's where that picture was taken. And ends up on the back of the new album. So. And another one we sent to Chiswick Records ended up, I don't think it was ever opened, but it ended up being stored for years and years and years, and then discovered, and then somebody put it up for auction. And it was basically 3 photos, double-sided biog, that's that thing I held up to you, 2 business cards, 2-track demo tape, which was the 2 tracks that you've just heard one of them, Dirty Money and Situation Negative. Pack condition very good, as found, stored in its original envelope in a dry environment, and it went at auction for unbelievable. So, yeah, so there are fans out there that are willing to pay that sort of money. I could really do with a drink. So, yeah, we got a really ramshackle, battered PA that we put together. I'm talking to a few musicians in the room, so I'll just go into a little bit of detail for the...
Tell us the nerdy stuff.
Yeah, all right. So we had these, I don't know if you can see it, but we had these microphones, which are condenser mics, but they were like stick things like that with a bend on. They sounded great, but they were prone to breaking down every 5 minutes. So we would always take a toolbox and soldering iron out to gigs because we needed to. The PA was a W-bin, an Altec type flare, and an RCF horn, radial horn.
And what did you have running through the PA? Was it, because it wasn't everything, right?
I was driving them first, so we had a Carlsborough mixer amp valve, 200 watt, and a 200 watt high watt slave, and that was driving those. Through them we had the vocals. See if I can find a picture. We had, oh yeah, it's there. You can just see a little square AKG mic on the bass drum. It's down there. And one on, I think we had a AKG on the snare. Can't see it on that. But we were short of mics. So we tended to put like a ball mic, which was not an SM58, it was a cheap sort of Shure thing. But it went in between the 2 tom-toms and nothing on the floor tom-tom. So. And we played with stacks, 4x12 stacks, 100 watt valve amps, turned to full, basically, loud. Yeah. Lighting, I don't know if you can see that. A couple of par 38s on a dot of wood. Lighting. And then that Vardis thing, that thing at the back that was basically just a piece of perspex about this size, and insulation tape. Effective on the cheap. So, yeah, we'd got a nice new demo that we'd done in a 16-track studio, which was expensive, and then the drummer left. So we got a guy in called Phil Medley, who I'm still mates with, this guy here. So Steve's writing the songs, he did a few more songs. Phil learnt the set, learnt the new songs, and your band lifts a bit every time you get somebody new, and it sort of takes it to the next level. And we needed another recording. So the recording we did was at Red Ball Records, which is at a place called Market Drayton, which is near Stoke. And that meant an overnight stay because we'd booked 2 days to do 4 tracks. And yeah, that's the morning after, so I'm looking a bit rough there. Here's Phil in the control room. For you geeks, we've got an 8-track Tascam and a Revox B77. JBL monitors. It was a good studio. So we'd done the recording, spent all the money up from the gigs, and we thought, this is really good. And in the spirit of the punks, who used to basically didn't need any record company, they put their own records out. So I think, well, we can do that. So we did, which is this one. Ah. So Red Ball Records, that's the EP. That is the 1978, is it? Can't remember. That's the original infamous 100 miles an hour EP. Do you want to play 100 miles an hour from that? So that's a little snippet of that, and we decided that we'd put it on the record, and we wanted to give value for money because we're from Yorkshire and we, value for money. And we also wanted to get it on pub jukeboxes, so we wanted to run it at 45 RPM. So we put in 2 tracks aside, and that's probably about 8 minutes worth of material on each side. The grooves were tiny, and the record sounded like crap. It was just really quite a disappointment, but it was our disappointment. Yeah. These top left picture, where it says Master and Positive, Fred's found these, and they're the original Master disc from, what they call it, when they from the lathe. Right, so when it comes off to the 2-track tape, it goes to a lathe, and the lathe cuts a groove into a disc, and then something is placed on top, which goes into the grooves, and it's got bridges where the grooves were, and that becomes the pressing positive. And if you look, RR017 on all of them. And that's the Red Ball Records 017. That's the number for that. So I just thought I'd throw that picture in because I'd never seen it before. Fred gave it to me. So yeah, we did that record, and that record, this record, is years ago. It was drawing £100, sorry, for fans. If you're not a fan, you don't want it. So, so that was great. We did all that, and Phil left. Yeah, bugger. So we got in a fellow called Gary Pearson, this hairy monster here. So by this time, again, the band lifted a bit more. Gary's a little bit more sort of punky in his style, a little bit harder hitting, and the sound of the band was basically honing itself to what it ended up as on the big records, on these, the LPs that we did. So round about this time, we're getting better gigs. We're doing like little mini tours. We're going up the northeast of England, up into Vera country, and staying overnight. We took caravan with us because we couldn't afford accommodation. We wanted to maximise all the earnings we got from gigs and put it back into promo, maintenance, whatever, building more gear. Yeah, there's a dressing room in a club. You don't get a dressing room in pubs, do you? No. So Gary joining necessitated another recording session. So we went back to Red Ball Records, and in a day recorded the next single, which was Out of the Way and If I Were King. Do you want to put If I Were King on? Yeah, that's enough of that. Thanks. So we're getting a little bit of attitude by this time. We've got this single out, which we borrowed money off our parents to put out. The first pressing on the blue label was 1,000 records. That sold out really quickly, so we had to have another pressing done, and that's the black label one. Round about this time, we had a couple of roadies. This is Big D and Chris, and I see the light show there. Doug. Farnells. We've got a box here. We had a series of boxes. Chris worked at the bus depot and he could get access to aluminium, so they pressed aluminium boxes around and a bit of wood at the back. And we got parabolic lamps and just stuck them in there and made his own lamp cans, and then switches, switching 240 volts to turn them on and off. But it worked, for the venues we were playing, it worked really well. But what we'd do is we would go and set up at a gig in an afternoon so that the audience wouldn't see us setting up, messing around with the gear, because our mantra was you don't see Rod Stewart setting his own gear up, sort of thing. So we're trying to act the star and be professional, so we'd do that, and then we'd have all the afternoon to kill. So we used to go to the pictures in whatever town, city we were in. So we got used to watching films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and things, and it says Warriors there. It's not the Wars, although up the Wars. You know a film called The Warriors?
Yeah.
You know it, right? So we were very influenced by that and the can-do attitude in getting back to Coney Island. Thought, these guys can do anything. Just, a few fat knackers and knocking sticks, it'd be right. So we adopted that sort of attitude of nothing will beat us. So we were the Warriors. Let's see what else we've got there. By this time we'd bought a few more mics. So Gary had a rack of 4 rototoms, so again, one mic between two, but it worked a little bit better. We've already traded in the valve amps and the valve mixer now for an mixing desk. And some really cheap amplifiers, but it sounded good. There was nothing else at the time until you got to the sort of pro gear. There was nothing in between. There was very little choice for gear in those days. That record did very, very well. It got us a agency based in London, which got us gigs further afield, and management, which was based in Slough, would you believe? And from that came a record contract with Logo Records. Logo Records used to have a band called the Tourists on. They left and formed the Eurythmics. And it was part of Marshall Cavendish, the publishing house that made magazines, monthly periodicals. And we thought, great, plenty of money. We later found out that Logo Records was basically a tax sink for Marshall Cavendish. They had a budget to spend to waste basically on bands, and so that budget was gone and they were down to the tax level they wanted to be at, there was no more money. So our first single, Let's Go, charted, something like 52, but anything in the top 75 is classed as a hit, because you get into the Guinness Book of Hit Records. 100 Miles an Hour live album, our debut album, also charted. Too Many People did as well, the second single, but that was maybe 74 out of the top 75. And by this time, we'd really discovered that Logo Records weren't pushing us in terms of advertising in the major press, the music press. Iron Maiden was with EMI, and they were getting album releases and full-page adverts, and we were getting a little corner bit. How it happens. We went on to make some more albums, more singles, and then I left the band, which basically brings us way back to this, because I left the band. They made another album with Terry Horbury, as I said. Vigilante. It's a good album. I'm not on it, but it's a good album. Cassettes. So, round about 1995, the first CD we ever had came out, and again, it's a compilation of the first 3 albums that I was on and the one that Terry was on. So there's 20 tracks of that. And then around 2012, was it? Something like that. The band reunited with Terry and started doing some heavy metal gigs, because there was basically interest for it. And I'm at the other end of the world, so bugger. Never mind. I've kept in touch with Steve along the years, and I've got to know his son really well. And his son discovered the original masters for the original EP and decided, this is so much better than the record. Let's put it out. So they remastered it and got a good press in, and we have the album. Like I said, I showed you the different ones. The album as we see today, which has got basically on side A, the first 4 tracks from that EP. On side B, the first 2 tracks are the next single we did with Gary, If I Were King and Out of the Way. And then there's Dirty Money and Situation Negative, which was from that very first 16-track demo, and one called Rock and Roll Lullaby, which was from a 4-track demo we did a little bit after that, still with Paul Wadkin, that first drummer. The CD version also has 3 more bonus tracks, which again is from that 4-track studio demo. So a little bit ropey being 4-track. It was actually a single garage in somebody's house, whatever. Blue Rock, Dirty Money, and The World's Insane. So it's out now. It's for sale. Please buy it. So I just thought I'd. That's the coda of my little write-up that I did for the liner notes. So yeah, I'll just show you the booklet. It's pretty good. We've got a lyric sheet in there as well, and the booklet that Fred's put together is awesome. So publicity shots, just lots and lots of clips, write-ups from various newspapers and DJs and fans and things, and fanzines. As we're getting a little bit more famous, releasing logo stuff, we're getting more write-ups in the music press, Sounds, New Musical Express. Melody Maker didn't want to touch as much because they went into new wave. But yeah, all punctuated through all this booklet is this text, not that bit there, not that, that's the write-up, but that bit there is what I've written for the liner notes, just to tell the story a bit in a little bit more detail. So, yeah, there you go, and we're back at the end. So,
I have a.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
No worries.
I'll throw the floor open to questions in a second. We've got time for a couple. I had a question about the sound, which is that it was just kind of an observation that the earlier tracks that you played didn't sound especially metal, and the later ones sounded a bit more like what you would call metal. And I wondered if you had like a comment on the way that progressed. Well
spotted. But like I said earlier, in 1977, the metal thing was in the past. You know, what we saw as metal, heavy metal then, were bands like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, that had come around the turn of the decade. So you'd got heavy metal bands like that. They were heavy rock, but they were termed as metal because of the guitar sound being quite abrasive and distorted. Then you got your glam rock, obviously, and then a little bit later on, a few years later, you got your folk rock, which was bands like Lindisfarne, and you know all about folk rock. And then you got country rock from America, Eagles and I suppose Doobies and bands like that and what have you. Jazz rock, Steely Dan, and then you got prog rock bands like Genesis and Yes and Rick Wakeman, my mate Rick. So in those days we were just a rock band. Very heavily influenced by Status Quo, and Steve was very heavily influenced by T-Rex. So I liked all sorts of bands, even Glenn Miller and bands like that. The Glenn Miller band, because my dad was a musician and he got me into all sorts of different stuff. So I suppose with Paul, the drummer, at the start, I was coming into a band that was already existing, and his style of drumming was sort of, you know, in that vein. Phil came in, and he was more into the proggy sort of way of things. So it lifted a little bit because he was into Bill Bruford and you know, jazzier drummers, but he still played quite heavily. But when Gary came in, he was like an out-and-out punk, so he was just go for it sort of thing. So as the aggression built with the drumming, it also did with the guitaring. So it just sort of grew from that. Good question.
All right. Well, thank you again, Alan.
No worries.
Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? I can run around with the mic so we can add them to the recording.
Laura.
Hello. This is not a nerdy question at all. When you played those big $40,000 people,
yeah.
What did a day look like?
So obviously when you're doing a big concert like that, as a support act, you are booked to just turn up. You don't get a sound check. So we'd turn up with our roadies early in the day. We'd put our gear, unload the gear and set it up at the side of the stage to go in. At the Port Vale one, we were on first, so we actually got a little bit of precedence there because we could put ours on stage and it would be there. But when you're in the middle of other acts, if somebody's been on before you and somebody's going to come on afterwards, they've got to get their gear off, you've got to get your gear on. You know, it's...
Gear off.
Pardon?
Get your gear off.
Yeah.
You see the pictures?
Yeah.
Lots of gear off the big chest.
Get your kit off.
Didn't Steve play barefoot most of the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
Can't tell that.
That was a gimmick. Yeah, that was his little gimmick. So what was the question again? What did your day look like? That was right. So we'd go in there and it'd be like Charlie Watts once said when asked what's it like being with the Stones after 25 years. This is going back a few years. He says, "Oh, it's 5 years of playing and 20 years hanging around." And it was pretty much that. You were just hanging around a lot, waiting for your turn to do stuff. So, yeah.
You guys, you got pretty big there, and I just can't help wondering, and you might not want to answer this, do you have any Spinal Tap moments?
Plenty.
that you would tell us?
Plenty. I almost got electrocuted once. I know it's the drummer that dies in Spinal Tap, but on here, let's go back to this thing, which was basically standing on stacks at the back of the room behind the drummer, and the wire for it come loose one day, and I've got my bass on. I feel comfortable now. So I turned around and the wire just went, and it's live, and it touched the knob here, and it's still got the marks on the knob, and I just went like that. And I think one of the machines bent as it hit the floor, sort of thing. So, yeah, that was a close call from getting 240 volts up my jacksie. There were others. There were other parts.
I'm going to ask another question just because there's a story that I want to set you up to tell, which is I believe that one of those basses has been on an adventure.
Oh, yeah. This one was a bass that we bought when we got an advance from Logo Records. I think Gary bought some cymbals or something, and me and Steve got a spare guitar. So to this point, we only had one instrument each. So if you broke a string or anything, you'd play with one less string. That was it. Because we used to do like an hour and 15 sets, no breaks. So there was no time to change the string, so you just had to be able to do it. This got stolen from my van in Palmerston North around about 2001 after I'd done a Cold Kiwi gig with a band. You know the Cold Kiwi thing? You know it. Know it well, yeah. So I got back from the mountain something like 4 in the morning, couldn't be asked, putting my gear in the house, left it in the van. Next morning, van's open, my gear's gone. Claimed the insurance, and because I lost a Telecaster as well, a Telecaster guitar and some other gear. And Pete, you know Pete? Hughes, yeah. He'd lent me a what's it for the night? What do they call them? Radio thing, transmitter thing. That gone. So I had to buy him one back. About 9 or 10 years later, I'm looking through Trade Me and I see this and I'm thinking, that looks familiar. Because it's been changed about a bit. I've got Graphtec bridges, because I used to break strings all the time. Graphtec nut and this DiMarzio pickup. And I thought, that looks very much like my bass. So I asked the guy through the questioning, I said, what case is it in? Can you describe the case? He described the case. I said, yeah, it sounds like mine. So I bought it back. I'd already had the insurance money, but I bought it back 9 years later, didn't we?
Yes.
And I got it back and I got the case and I opened the case up and there was a pen in there from a music shop in Bradford. It was still there after all these years. So there's your story, you.
Does anybody else have any extra questions? We've got time for one, maybe two, if they're brief.
Yes, where can you buy the album from? I'll just do that one first and then, yeah. So the album's available at the moment, not in New Zealand. There's a shop in Melbourne that can ship out, or you can get it basically from Europe. So I don't. If you want the hard copy, you're going to have to basically pay for packaging and not the packaging, the shipping, which is not going to be cheap. But I don't know, to be honest, for the hard stuff. So what you'd have to do is look on just do a Google search for Vardis' new album, 100 Miles an Hour, 79 Revisited, and see where the outlets are. But it is available for download on all the major streaming platforms. So there's Apple Music, Spotify. There was another one. What's it called?
Bandcamp, perchance?
No, not Bandcamp. There's Tidal. Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon, and YouTube. So it's out there. Any more?
Excellent. Any final questions?
Tell them about Finland.
What about Finland?
Yeah, what about Finland?
Finland.
When are you going to tell us about Finland?
For some reason, Finnish rock fans loved us, and we toured there 3 times. Twice in the summer and once in the winter, in all the snow. And it was just great, yeah. What else do you need to know about Finland? There's lots of lakes. Population 4 million at the time, and it was presumably, I suppose, a lot like New Zealand. Very beautiful country.
How big were your audiences?
In Finland, when we did the summer, they used to do things called summer gigs, summer places. And it was usually at the side of a lake, and there's a stage, and it was a big outdoor event, and there'd be 4,000 or 5,000 people. Yeah. Or we'd play maybe in the middle of Helsinki a nightclub, which maybe had 300-400 people in it. You know, it depended where you went. But yeah.
And you learned to love saunas and...
I love saunas. We go sauna. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever see any bands or your own band do any really crazy stuff?
Yeah.
You can tell me later.
Yeah, I'll tell you later. Yeah. Anything else, Hugh?
All right. Well, does anyone have any final questions? If not, I'll just like to call for another big hand for Alan. This has been really cool.